Hey guys, back in the spring I did a video about this project. So what we're looking at here is essentially a B5, but I have affectionately named it the B5.6. So this is an update. I built the car over the winter/spring, and after running it in several races here in New Brunswick, Canada over the summer, I decided I would then come back and talk to you about whether or not I thought it was a viable project and how it worked out. So, in short, it was awesome. So let me go back and talk to you again about the car itself and what I did to build it. So one of the issues that people have with restoring a B5 or still trying to run a B5 is the body is difficult to get. But I found a page on Facebook called Penguin Body Shells, maybe. They're out of somewhere in the UK, and they produce reproductions of older bodies. So that's where I got my B5 body. And then I had Acadian Designs Stefan Doucet paint it to my current paint scheme for this year, and it came out awesome. So bodies are available. All right, so what did I do to upgrade or update this from the original B5? So starting at the very front and working my way back, we'll talk about some of the parts that I've got on here. So this part is an aluminum pin brace, and apparently that was a weak spot on the B5. I did end up breaking one of the plastic ones. I purchased some more plastic ones, but then it was one of these ended up in my parts bin through some secondhand vehicle that I got. I think it was a Pro SC10 that I got from a racer here in New Brunswick, and that was on there, so I put it on here. The arms, these are not B5 arms. These are B6 arms, and the advantage in running a B6 arm over a B5 arm is you have 3 shock locations on the arm as opposed to 2, which are on the 2 are only available on the B5 arm. Okay, now to make these fit required almost no modification, a little bit of sanding on the front of the arm here, and if you notice right in here there's a shim, and no real need to put that in there other than just I didn't want any exposed pin. I wanted that gap sealed up. It's not going to move back and forth without that shim, but I put a shim in there anyway in case you're wondering about that. What else did we do here? Oh, okay, caster blocks and steering blocks. So these axles, B6, steering blocks, B6, caster blocks, B6, all because it adds more adjustability to the car. You can see here I'm using B6 caster Hat Bushings, and I've got my hub carrier or my front axle carrier all the way down to add more steering. I went with the carbon fiber plate that your ball stud goes onto. You'll notice the steering cup I have on this end is the angled one, typically designed to be used with the B74. Because of the geometry going on here with the B6 parts and the B5 chassis, this angled ball cup allowed me to put my steering turnbuckle at a straighter angle than if I had gone with a straight cup. It would have been off at a bit of an angle, and not really sure what that was going to do to the steering. So I put this on, and I never even tested a straight one. This worked great. The car had gobs of steering. I liked it the way it was, so I just left it. That's the other thing that I changed when I built this car was all of the ball cups are B6 ball cups. All the balls are, the ball studs are B6 ball studs. Up front here, I tried both the ball stud in the outside and inside hole on the ball stud mount, and it changes how the car responds, maybe the camber gain. I tried it both ways. I tried it short and long, and initially I tried it long with the ball stud in the inside hole on the ball stud mount, and it wasn't as responsive as it was on the outside. So I put it on the outside and I left it there. And whether it's on my personal short, small, tight backyard track or our biggest tracks, I preferred it on the outside hole for how it made the car just a little bit more responsive, edgier. And I always set my cars up with like max steering, and if I can adjust whatever I can adjust on the car mechanically to add mechanical grip, I do. I bring my front axles all the way down, I bring my rear hubs all the way down, I bring my rear hubs all the way back, etc. It's just how I've kind of learned to drive, and frankly our tracks require that kind of a setup often because they are low bite tracks. The other thing I did was I added a set of aluminum steering bell cranks, but I kept the plastic rack because it's on dirt. I know some guys run all aluminum on carpet and Astro, and then on dirt they go aluminum cranks and a plastic rack, and that's what I did. I think I've got an aluminum rack. As a matter of fact, I know I have an aluminum rack, but I just stayed with the plastic. The link up here between the servo and the aluminum servo horn is not your typical B5 or even the one that comes on like a Pro SE10. This is 2 ball cups like on the B6 with 3 millimeters of spacing between them as opposed to 2 millimeters on a B6. And then the battery. The foam around the battery can be placed with a space at the front to push the battery all the way back, or you can flip that foam to bring the battery forward a little bit. So I've got it at the back, again, to try and create some mechanical grip there in the setup of the car. The car without any additional weight sits at 68% rear weight bias, which I think the best I've seen in a mid-motor car with weight added to the back is 66, 67%. So without any additional weight added on the back of this rear motor car, it's at 68% rear weight bias. So again, adding gobs of forward bite and rear traction. This car, depending on the grip level of the track on the day, has been known to lift its wheels when I come out of the corner and go down a straight. So rear traction, not an issue. The shocks are B6 shocks with Kashima bodies and J Concepts caps. And coming towards the back here, I've got an aluminum ball stud mount at the back of the car. And as far as the C block, so one of the best things that Associated did with the 6 series was make aluminum C and D blocks that took concentric pills that allowed you to adjust your anti-squat and toe to a 1/2 degree and to 1 degree, and now they have an extra set of inserts that are 1.5 degrees. So all kinds of adjustability there. The 5 series had a fixed, let me grab one. Here we go. All right, I'm going to show you the different generations here. So this is the C block that came with the 5 series. And if you look closely, when I figure out how to hold it and it focuses, there's a 3+1 there. That means 3 degrees of toe and 1 degree of anti-squat. So these were not adjustable. You actually removed the entire block and screwed it to the chassis. On the front of this, well, on the C block currently I'm running in this car is one of these plastic ones set up with 3+2. Okay. Later on, they came out with, they being Associated, came out with an aluminum C block. Now these are just about impossible to find. Last time I saw one for sale was on eBay and it was out of Australia. This used a insert, and these concentric pills I talked about that came out for the 6 series as well. But so in the front of this one it says 3.5 plus 2R, and then you could actually flip it and it would say 3.25 plus 1L. And the 3.5 is the toe, and I'm assuming, yeah, the R and the L are left and right, so you had to put them into the block in the correct sides to get the correct amount of anti-squat and toe. So 3.5 degrees of toe and 2 degrees of anti-squat. And the reason why I'm not running this is because I have an aluminum C-block on the back of this car, which also has pills. Those pills are very different though. They're not like the little associated B6 pills with the dots. They're just an arrow. Put the arrows in to remove a degree of toe, point the arrows out to add a degree of toe. So if I was to use this with those inserts in the D block with the arrows pointed in, I would keep that 3.5 degrees of toe. But if I put the arrows out, it would be 4.5 degrees of toe, which is too much toe, especially on this thing. And there's another modification I did to this car we'll get to in a minute. You'll understand why I'm not running 4.5 degrees of toe. This is the 0.6 C block, the B6 C block. So quite a bit different than the 5 series, but as you can see, it still has the holes for the inserts. Okay, so the other thing that I did on this B5 was I added B6.2 rear suspension arms, again, to add adjustability. Now these arms are symmetrical, okay? And they have 2 holes in the front of the arm for your bottom of your shock, and 1 hole in the back. So their arms have to be symmetrical in order for you to flip them. So arms are either symmetrical or they have toe built into them that sweep forward to add toe to the car, to add forward grip, okay? So the B6 arms are symmetrical. There's no built-in toe. The built-in toe on the B6 is in the hubs. And I talked about this in the first video and how I've reversed them, because I got Ray Monday help me set this up. And he was saying that if I use the right hub on the right side and the left hub on the left side, and the way they're intended to be used, it would actually have too much forward sweep and too much toe on this car, and it would not handle well. Here we can see the aluminum rear D block, and you'll probably never see that arrow on camera, but the arrows, the inserts are pointed inboard, so they're pointed this way, and that is because I wanted to keep it at 3 degrees of toe. Any more than that and it would be too much and would probably slow the car down, not handle well. As I said, some days it has so much forward traction that the front wheels lift. So, and yet it still has good steering. Like, I don't complain about steering for this car. Typically, if you have too much rear traction, you lose front traction, you lose front traction, you lose steering, but that is not the case with this car. So that's the build. Oh, the other thing I did was, and I did this just before the video, I added a 78 tooth Octalock spur and Octalock B6.3 slipper pads to this car, upgrading it from, I think, what would have been an original B5 81 tooth spur and slipper pads. So all of my cars now, both carpet and dirt, are running Octalock slipper setups. The motor, for those that are interested, is an 8.5 turn Hobbywing motor, and I've got the manual on a gearbox with this ratio would call for a 22 on the 78, but to kind of take a little bit of that bite and initial torque out, I'm running a 23. So okay, the car, just like my rear motor short course truck, is just so much easier to drive than a mid motor car on our tracks, and just so much easier to set up. You don't have to chase the roll center, you don't have to chase the anti-squat, you don't have to chase, period. They just, by nature of being rear motor and having so much available mechanical grip, just by the nature of being rear motor and having more rear weight bias, just handle better on our tracks. And ironically, it's so funny, when I was building this car and did the first video, I talked about how the best drivers in the province were still running rear motor cars, but eventually they were probably going to switch to mid motor cars. So they're all TLR drivers, God bless their hearts. And they have made the switch because their rear motor cars that TLR produces, it's very hard to get parts for them. or so I'm led to believe. Now that Associated has a no prep drag car that is rear motor, they have a two-wheel drive short course RTR that is rear motor. A lot of those parts are 5 Series parts, which make these cars still a viable option if your track is still low bite, loose, loamy type of surface and not man-made. Well, man-made, you know what I mean? It's not a prep surface with grease or oil or any of that stuff, or it's not a sugar track, right? This thing on a sugar track would be a nightmare. I suppose. I can't really say, but I mean, there's a reason why everybody's running laybacks and laydowns on sugar tracks and linseed oil tracks, right? So for us, rear motor is still just easier. Now these guys have cracked the code on the mid motors, and I believe by the end of the season they had their mid motor cars running faster lap times than their rear motor cars, because, as you know, if you drink the Kool-Aid, you know that a mid motor car simply carries more corner speed, and races are won in corners. So they got that figured out. They go and make the switch from rear motor to mid motor, while I'm trying to rejuvenate a rear motor associated platform. And I did, and it worked well. I didn't win anything, but it was still easier and more enjoyable, because you know, if you're winning or losing, it doesn't matter as long as you're having fun. And for me, I have fun when I don't fight the car, and by that I mean the car goes where I want it to go within my skill set. The car does the things that I want it to do and expect it to do, which results in a more enjoyable experience at the track. So I'm still working with mid-motor stuff. I'm going to do a video on my B6.3D, which is far from what most people would expect a B6.3D to be. I'll save that for another video. But for those of you that followed this B5.6 project, that watched the initial video, that were wondering how it worked, I'll tell you, it worked a lot better than my rear motor stadium I tried, which I'm going to do a video on as well. But yeah, if you were curious about this, it works. Now, good news. You don't have to go through everything I went through to source some of these parts, because this started off as a B5M to B5 conversion kit. Okay, and all that really got me was the chassis, the top plate. Did it even get me the top plate? I don't know. It got me the chassis and the shock towers for sure, but you can use SR10 shock towers on a B5 chassis. But anyway, DB10 is it DB10? No, RB10. RB10. Associated has released an RTR no prep drag car. They've released an RTR rear motor two-wheel drive short course truck, and now they've released an RTR rear motor two-wheel drive buggy, which is somewhere between a B4 kind of wider chassis than this and a B5. So it's rear motor, it's RTR, and all you would have to do to get that thing up to where this thing is put on the B6 suspension and steering components, the rear hubs, the front hub carriers, caster blocks, B6 suspension arms. The shocks are, you can upgrade them. So, you know, if I bought one of those RB10s, the first thing I would do, the gear diff would come out and a B5 ball diff would go in. B5 ball diff is just different outdrives. The gear itself is still the same as the B6. The balls, the rings, everything is B6 compatible. So you just get yourself those B5 outdrives and you can build a ball diff for your RB10. Next thing I would do would be the shocks, and then, you know, better quality race electronics. And man, you got a viable rear motor package that for club racing would be phenomenal, or whatever your racing is. If you are running on a backyard track without a prep surface that's low bite, old school, and you know a rear motor is going to perform better and will be easier to set up, then that RB10 is a super viable option. So look into that. Upgrade the diff, upgrade the shocks, and if you want, then you can even upgrade the suspension components. What that's going to do is get you adjustability, because there's no adjustability in those rear hubs. They don't move up and down. I think they're fixed, right? I don't even know if they move forward or back, but by going to the B6.2 hubs on this car, I've got 2 millimeters of movement forward and back, and 3 millimeters of movement up and down, and I can change the ball stud location on the hub in and out a millimeter or two. So I love it. It's awesome. It was worth every moment and penny I put into it, and I hope you enjoyed following this little video series on this car. And up next will be a follow-up video on my Pro SC 10.6. That video is the most watched video on my channel because it's a very popular truck and people are curious to see what I did to it, and it was all good. There was one major change made to it. You know what? I'll just wait. I'll save it for the video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Stay safe. Bye for now.